I logged her as Asset 7 for 6 years before I ever wrote down her real name, and even then, I only wrote it where nobody but me would read it. The depot called it Salvage. Cold Storage Wing 4, 3 levels under the Corvale Ridge, climate locked and forgotten, full of crates pulled off a war that ended before half the current staff were born. Most of what we kept down there was dead weight, burned out drive cores, cracked hull plating, a few weapons nobody could identify and nobody wanted to. Asset 7 was different only in that it hummed. A faint, steady note under the floor, the kind of sound you stop hearing after the first month and then catch yourself listening for again at month 60. She was sealed behind reinforced glass in a stasis crate built for someone else's war, and the manifest that came with her, water damaged, half the ink gone, listed her as recovered Varine command tech, condition unknown, disposition pending. Nobody above me had opened a Varine file in a decade. Nobody below me wanted to. I was the one who walked the wing twice a night with a flashlight and a logbook, and somewhere in my second year I noticed the insignia worked into the collar of what she wore under the frost, a circle broken by 3 lines, the kind of mark you don't stamp on cargo. I looked it up on an old archive terminal nobody had wiped. It was a royal seal, House Varane. Their last queen had a name in that record, before the record itself was sealed, Tessa K. Varane. I started writing it in the margin of my log instead of the case number. Not on the official line. I wasn't fool enough for that, just a small note to myself, every night, under the temperature reading. TKV, stable. Nobody read those margins. I told myself I was being careful. I think I was being decent, and didn't have a better word for it yet. I was 33 when I came to Corvale, 10 years out of an engineering corps that didn't need me anymore once the fighting stopped, and the depot took men like that the way a riverbed takes silt, quietly, without much asking. The work suited me. Nobody down in Wing 4 wanted conversation, and I'd run out of things I wanted to say to people who hadn't been where I'd been. The dead crates didn't ask anything of me. Asset 7 was the one exception, and I never could explain that to anyone who hadn't stood in front of that glass at 3 in the morning with the whole ridge silent overhead. I talked to her sometimes, on the slow nights, not because I thought she could hear me, because the wing was quiet enough that silence started to feel like an insult to whoever was behind that glass. Frost-white hair grown past her shoulders in 60 years of stillness, skin the deep clay red of old riverbank stone, lashes pale with rime. I told her about the weather up top, which she'd never feel. I told her my name. I never expected anything back. The night the chamber woke, I was 40 minutes into my rounds, and the hum changed pitch before the alarms even caught it. I felt it in my teeth first. Then the lights along Wing 4 shifted from standby amber to live red, and every speaker in the depot started reciting the same line. Unauthorized activation, Asset 7, all personnel to containment stations. By the time Colonel Reyes got down there with 4 armed techs behind him, the frost on the crate had gone to water and was running off the glass in sheets, and behind it, for the first time in 6 years, something was moving, not lashing out, not striking the glass, just breathing, slow, deliberate, like she was relearning how. Her eyes were open, pale violet, and they found the room the way a person finds a room they don't recognize, looking for one thing that makes sense. Get the charge set, Reyes said. If that's a weapon platform reactivating, I am not finding out what it does at full output. Nobody argued. 4 sets of hands started rigging a breach and purge charge to the crate's seam. Standard protocol for an asset that wakes without authorization. I understood the protocol. I'd trained on it. I also understood, watching her eyes move across 4 armed strangers and one drawn weapon after another, that she was looking for the one thing in that room that wasn't pointed at her. I stepped where she could see me and said her name. Not the case number, not Asset 7. I said Tessa, quiet, the way I'd said it to an empty crate 100 times before, except this time, the eyes behind the glass stopped moving, and found mine and held there. Garrow, step back, Reyes said. She's not a weapon platform, I said. She's a person. She's a queen. House Vorin. It's in the manifest, if anybody'd ever finished reading it. That manifest is 60 years out of compliance, and so is she. Step back. I didn't. I put myself between the charge and the seam, which is not a thing they teach you to do, and not a thing I'd have predicted of myself an hour earlier. My hands were shaking. I kept them where Reyes could see they weren't reaching for anything. The water from the melting frost had reached my boots by then, cold enough to feel through the leather, and somewhere behind me I could hear the charge crew still working the seam clamps, unwilling to stop on a colonel's pause when no one had told them to. You set that charge, you kill someone who never got a hearing, I said. I've read every page of what's left of that file. She didn't surrender. Her line did. After she was already in the crate. Nobody asked her anything. Nobody's asked her anything in 60 years. That's not your call, Garrow. No, I said. It isn't. It's hers. The glass between us had gone fully clear by then, water pooling at her bare feet, and she was standing, unsteady, one palm against the inside of the seam, watching the standoff the way you'd watch weather you couldn't yet read. I don't know what she understood of the words. I know she understood the shape of it, one man standing where the others wouldn't. The release mechanism on her side of the crate wasn't locked from outside, not anymore. 60 years of corrosion had seen to that, and she found it with her free hand without looking, like her body remembered even if she didn't. The seam broke. The charge crew flinched back. Reyes had his hand half raised for an order he never finished giving, because she stepped through onto the wet floor, swayed once, caught herself on the crate's frame, and looked straight at me instead of at any of the men with weapons. Garrow, she said. Not a question, not a guess. My name, in a voice rough from 60 years of disuse, said the way you say something you've practiced without knowing you were practicing it, the way I'd said her name into an empty room 100 nights running, and never once thought it was landing anywhere. You read the margins, I said. It wasn't really a question either. I heard them, she said. I have heard everything. For a long time, I could not answer. I am answering now. Reyes didn't lower the order. He didn't need to. 4 men with a breach charge and no target left to use it on is just 4 men standing in a wet room, and after a long moment he holstered the trigger and told the crew to stand down and called it in as a custody transfer pending review, which is the kind of phrase a man uses when he doesn't yet know how to say what actually happened. I drove her up out of Wing 4 myself, against 3 separate objections from people with more rank than me, because the transfer paperwork needed a name in the escort line, and mine was the only one she'd answer to. She didn't say much on the way up. She watched the lights pass overhead like she was counting them. At the surface door, where the cold outside air hit her face for the first time in 6 decades, she stopped walking and looked at me for a long moment before she spoke again. 60 years, she said, and the only record that had my name right was a margin nobody was meant to read. I read it every night, I said. Seemed wrong not to. She didn't smile, not yet. That would come later, slow, the way everything about her relearning the world came slow and deliberate and entirely her own pace. But she reached out and laid her hand flat against my chest, over the logbook still in my jacket pocket, like she could feel the margin notes through the leather. Then you are the first record this depot ever kept that was true, she said. Walk me out the rest of the way, Garrow. I would like to see what they built while I was gone. I did, and for the first time in 6 years, the log I kept that night had no case number on it at all. Just her name, in full, on the official line, where it should have been from the start.